Was that the right answer, by the way?
It was perfect, yeah. I just always like to check that I've got the right people here for the right thing, because otherwise 10 minutes on somebody go, So what we want to do is give you a quick briefing on safety boat operating during coronavirus. And the clubs are some of the most experienced safety boat drivers, if they'd be willing to provide any cover, and obviously you're part of that group. So what we're trying to make sure is that we can provide at least a minimum level of safety cover during coronavirus. So my background to doing this is that I'm the club safety advisor, which is on the back of 30 years in the fire service, most of which I was a hazardous materials specialist working on chemical incidents and that sort of thing, and decontamination. So I've done a fair bit of related work in my other career, which is why I'm helping out with the club with this. So the principles we're trying to apply are based on the standard protection that I would apply in my job for any hazardous material. And the three things that will protect you are time, distance and shielding. So the timing is the less time you spend near the hazardous problem, the less chance you've got of getting anything from it. The distance is the further away from it you are, the less chance you have of getting anything from it. And the shielding is protection you might wear to stop the bad stuff getting to you. So all of our protective procedures here are based around time, distance and shielding. Okay. Where you've seen that in coronavirus is the contact tracing system that's up and running now. If you're within 2 meters of somebody, that's distance, for 15 minutes, that's timing, then you're at higher risk of catching the bug. Now the World Health Organization guidance says 1 meter separation, and it's true, there's less chance of getting it at 1 meter than there is at 1 centimeter. If you step back another meter, the chance of you catching the bug drops exponentially. There's a log curve for distance versus your likelihood of catching something.
Yeah.
So if you step back from 1 meter to 2 meters, you double the distance, but you quarter the risk.
It's 13 down to 3.
Yeah. So it's massively more effective, adding just a little bit more distance. The key thing about 2 meters is trying to judge how far 2 meters is. There you go, you're 2 meters. That's perfect.
Yeah, I just have to lie down all the time.
Yeah, well, I think that
And I'm
gate
1.5.
is not quite 2 meters. I was doing some stuff with the Red Cross a couple of weeks ago, which involved briefing lots of people and then sending them out to go and knock on doors. And the guy that was organising it turned up on the first day with a bamboo pole that was 2 meters long. And I realised seeing that I'd been misjudging 2 meters, and I'd been at about 1.5 meters thinking it was 2, and I'd completely misjudged it. So it is well worth emphasising to people how far 2 meters is. Yeah.
2.
And you'll see constantly people misjudging it. And one of your safety roles is going to have to be to say to people, just move back a bit, will you? And they'll look at you as if, what's the matter with you? You've been anal about this, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it is. So try and keep the distances if you can. The one person here who's really, really good at it is Hillary. And she does, if you walk around the site with her, she does this amazing 2 meter dance where wherever you move, she's making sure she's keeping 2 meters from you, which is the right thing to do. But you'll get loads and loads of people who just don't see the risk the same way and don't perceive the problem the same way that you're seeing it. As representatives of the club, you need to try and maintain that best practice. And if the government says 2 meters, then 2 meters it is. In line with that best practice, the guidance is changing almost every day, and we need to keep up with that. So this morning, the World Health Organization has said that people should wear face coverings if they're out in the open. The UK government said something similar last night, obviously because it had seen what was coming from the World Health Organization, and is strengthening its guidance on wearing face coverings. So we'll do face coverings. A face covering is something as simple as that. Okay, I'm now adhering to the World Health Organization guidelines and the UK government guidelines. This isn't a mask, it's a covering. So this, if I've got the bug, it reduces the chances of me transferring it to you.
Yeah, it doesn't stop you getting it, it stops you transferring it to someone else.
It helps a little bit, but it's more about passing it on.
Yeah.
A mask,
Wear them at work and they don't do anything.
yes, yeah, they're very hard to wear. They're very hard to have effect. So this looks like a mask, but it's not, because the definition is carefully worded by the government. A face covering doesn't need a British standard or an EN number. It's just something that helps stop the bugs getting out and about. A face mask has to have the certification on it to say that it's been tested to stop particular sizes of droplets getting through to you.
But you also have, they're pointless unless they're sealed.
They have to be worn correctly.
And they're the right size.
Yes.
So even if you had, even if that was a mask and you were wearing it, you would have to have it face fitted.
Yes. So fire services have to do a face fit test because we share breathing apparatus masks. You don't get an individual issue mask even now unless your face is such an odd shape that it won't fit.
I
So
have my own pack.
I have a widow's peak that comes down here, which meant that my breathing apparatus mask never fitted properly. But we never did anything about that because we couldn't afford all the different masks. So masks aren't infallible. A face covering is even less infallible. They're not a cure-all, and that's the government concern about. If people think just because you put that on you're safe, that's not the case. One of the problems with these is when you put them on, if you hold them like that to put them on, you just contaminated the inside. If when you're taking them off, you do that to take it off, you've contaminated the inside. So you have to be careful putting these on, that you hold them on the outside only, and you put them on without, there you go, without touching the inside.
So you're going to want to wear them on the boat?
Okay, so we'll cover that.
They'll get wet.
Patience, dear, patience.
So, face coverings, not masks. This will do. That will do. The thing to bear in mind with it, yep, is that it's not infallible. It's just one of the extra tools in the toolbox that will help. Your main route for getting bugs into you isn't through your mouth and nose, because anything you swallow has got to survive your stomach, and that's going to kill 90% of anything getting into you, just trying to survive the environment in your stomach. The main route for you to worry about for the virus transmission is through your eyes, because droplets hitting your eyes go into your tear ducts. The tear ducts go into the lymphatic system, which pumps all the way around your body without going via the stomach. So the main transmission route we're worried about, he says, reaching for them, is your eyes. So if we can protect your eyes with something like these, all well and good. You've both got glasses on, which will help a lot, but ideally you want protection around the top and the sides as well, to stop droplets curling in around the sides. We've put goggles into the coxswain shed for use by rescue drivers. They're in sealed plastic bags, so you can either put those on over your glasses, or you can wear this sort of protection to stop splashes getting into your eyes. Okay. The third level of protection is for your hands, because touching something then put it onto you is another main route of transmission. So we want 3-layer protection for your hands, and we're applying the same principles that I used to use for flood response in the fire service. We teach firefighters that flood water is raw sewage, because that's what it is. You can't consider it to be anything else. So we teach them to apply 3 layers of protection to their hands. The first layer is soap and water or alcohol wipe, squirts. The best thing for killing the bugs, and again this is relatively new information, there's a layer of fat around the outside of the COVID virus cell, and the fat acts as a protective sheath to keep the virus viable. If you use a degreasing agent that breaks down fat, you in effect break down the surface of the virus cell and make it more vulnerable to being knocked out. And that's why soap and water works so well. So any degreasing agent, like soap, will work very effectively to kill off the virus. High percentage alcohol, 70% plus alcohol, will work too, but it's not as effective as a degreasing agent. But the alcohol squirts are easier to apply. So if you start off with applying the alcohol gel or soap and water, then put latex gloves over. Yep. Okay, so that's why if you use the alcohol gel, it's easier. Okay. Then put the latex glove over the top. The trouble with the latex glove is they're not very robust. So if you put those on and then go drive a boat for 20 minutes, they're going to tear very easily. So what we tell our firefighters is wear 3 layers of protection. First you put the squirt on, then you put latex gloves on, and then you put your work gloves over the top. So you've got triple layer protection, okay? So that way you've got robust, like your outer gardening gloves, over latex gloves, over a chemical barrier with the liquid that you put on. That can make you feel very cumbersome and not very dexterous, but if when you're dealing with a casualty you take your outer gardening gloves off, or your boat gloves or work gloves, the latex gloves underneath should still be not torn because they've been protected, and then you can get on and deal with the casualty. So 3-layer protection for your hands if you can, a face covering, and eye protection. Those are the shielding systems you want for protection. In terms of time distance shielding, time-wise, we only want you going near someone if it's a mayday situation. So the only rescue work you'll be doing is for life-saving. It's not for people whose vessel's disabled or they've got a bit of a problem. The equivalent would be a mayday. So is there an immediate threat to life? If answer yes, in you go, but for the minimum amount of time. The distance factor we're also applying is the ribs will be only crewed by single crew unless you're locked down together. So if you're from the same household, you can crew together, which works for you guys. It works for me and my son, who's sitting in the car there ready, so that if Andy needs a crew today, then we could go out and crew as a twosome. But other than that, it's going to be single crewed ribs, which will limit the number of people exposed to each other and the time they're exposed to each other, but also limits what we can do, because you obviously can do less with one person than you can with 2. So you guys are really handy to us because you can operate as a pair, which makes you a very useful asset at the moment for the club.
We found a use in life,
Yeah.
You found your niche.
Now we know why we got married. Yeah.
But in terms of your involvement with sailors out there, it will only be for life-saving rescues. If you are trying to assist somebody, if you can do it at a distance, so much the better. So if they need a tow, deploy a throwing line and give them an astern tow rather than an alongside tow. And if that's a bit more awkward and takes longer, that's better than just working as we would normally, having them sit astride your boat with their boat alongside. That's not applying the distancing that we need. So astern tows and only helping them in extremis. In terms of life-saving actions, we're really just talking about resuscitation, CPR. And you've both done a first aid course relatively recently, haven't you? Well, do you remember when we did the first aid course, we talked about if you're doing chest compressions, you're pushing the casualty's heart up and down, but you're also pushing the lungs up and down. So you're pushing air in and out of the casualty when you press on their chest. So for about 5 or 6 years now, we've been teaching on first aid courses that you don't have to do mouth to mouth. It's better if you can, but it's not essential, because by pressing up and down on the chest, you're already getting some airflow in and out of the lungs. We were also teaching, and you may well remember this, using a barrier protection between you and the casualty. Wearing the gloves, putting the antiseptic wash on, but also using a pocket mask, which is in every first aid kit on the boats, or I've got my keys. On my key fob, which I've left in the car, is a little pouch, and you open the pouch up and there's a little plastic handkerchief with a valve in the middle. We looked at them on the first aid course, and that's a barrier protection. You can lay it over the casualty's mouth, blow through the valve, they get the resuscitation they need, you don't get any bugs coming back, and neither do they.
Is there one of those in each first aid kit now?
Yep. And we're also buying a bulk stock as well, because they're easier to use than the pocket masks. The pocket masks are effective if you fitted them correctly, but they're a bit of a fiddle to do that, especially bouncing around on a rib. It's a lot easier to use one of the little plastic face shields. Just lay it over their face like a hanky, make sure the valve's over their mouth, and then you can pinch the nose shut through the plastic, and you can breathe through the valve, and that'll give you the protection you need. So you've got the kit on the boat to carry out resus safely, And what we need to weigh up is the risk versus benefit of what you're doing. If the balance is between you having a small chance of potentially getting coronavirus, or them definitely drowning if you don't do anything, then on the balance of odds, you're better off trying to rescue them than you are worried about the faint chance you might get the bug.
If they're out there, they probably haven't.
Well, they might be asymptomatic.
Yeah, so one of the problems we've got is people who carry the bug but don't know. Again, the figures are changing on that. It was thought that roughly 50% of people who had coronavirus never knew they'd got it. But the Office of National Statistics has released a report this morning on the results of 19,000 tests in 9,000 homes across the UK. So it's households basically. They've tested everybody in 9,000 households, 19,000 people. 2/3 of the people who showed up as having had coronavirus didn't know. So only a relatively small number of people out of those 19,000 have ever had coronavirus, but of that small proportion, 2/3 of them had no clue. So it looks like people who are asymptomatic, have no sign of it, but are capable of spreading it, are in the majority of those that have caught it. So we have to assume that anybody here at the lake might have it.
If you're asymptomatic, is it the same 14 days that you're...
Yeah, so you are most likely to spread the bug in the 48 hours before you know you've got it. If you never know you've got it, then you could potentially be spilling it out to others. The silent spreaders is the phrase, isn't it? So it looks like 2/3 of the people who had it are silent spreaders who never knew. The infection period is roughly 7 days when you can pass it on to other people, but there's a bell curve. There are some people who've been able to pass it on after 30 days and some who can't pass it on after 2 days. So the majority is roughly 7 days, which is why the government advice is if you've had it, lock down for 7 days. If you've been exposed to someone that's had it, lock down for 14, because it might take that long to incubate and then come out in you. But that's going with big numbers of people, and there will be some who last much longer than that and are still capable of passing it on, and others at the other extreme. So we're having to go on big numbers, population totals rather than individuals. Okay. So time distance shielding, spend as little time as possible close to someone. Keep 2 meters away if you can. Keep reminding people of that. And on shielding, gel, gloves, outer gloves, face covering and eye covering when you're in close proximity. When you're not in close proximity, you don't need to do all that, unless the government guidance changes in line with this morning's guidance from the World Health Organization. Because as of this morning, the World Health Organization is saying if you're outdoors in public, you should wear a face covering. The UK government upped its guidance yesterday on when you should wear face coverings. May well up it again as a result of the new World Health Organization guidance.
Like you've got, just one of those.
Yes.
Those got those
Yeah,
coffee,
that's fine. Yeah, this is a face covering.
Yeah, and they're easier to wash.
Yeah.
It also said you've got to wash them daily as well.
Yeah, in terms of how long is this effective for, well, nothing's guaranteed, nothing's perfect. As long as you're wearing this, it's better than not.
So it's going to stop them sneezing on somebody, isn't it? 'Cause the
Yes,
sneeze-
exactly. So,
It's not going to stop the small particulates anyway.
no,
That's
it
that
just it
bacteria,
reduces
so-
the risk, it doesn't remove the risk. So it's one of the many strings we need to your bow. So that's why it's not just time or just distance or just shielding, you need all three.
What about visor?
Yeah, so we've ordered 4 new helmets for safety crew with a full face visor.
Yeah.
And again, that helps. But if you have a full face visor and underneath it a face covering, so much the
It's
better.
gonna be steamed up.
Well, that's one of the problems, is the practicalities of this. If the treatment does more damage than the disease, it's not worth having the treatment. So you have to have practical solutions. We're finding that using the dilute bleach spray to clean the tractor is fogging the inside of the windscreen of the tractor, so you can't see out of it.
Have you tried to do mister?
Well, that's what Andy and the coxswains are working on.
We use them on the saws at work, and that's quite good.
Well, if you can
Because you've
suggest
got a
that,
lubricant going all the time.
if you suggest it to Andy the coxswain, then he may well give it a look at.
Grinding saw demister.
Grinding saw demister.
Takes for Andy.
Okay.
Well, we've got that on the video now, so we can use that. We use a demister inside the fire service masks to keep it. It's called fog off, because that helps stop them fogging up. Toothpaste works pretty well too. Just rub a little bit of toothpaste on the inside of the mask. So we've provided goggles in sealed plastic bags in the coxswain shed. So if you are dealing with the casualty, tear open the pack, put the goggles on, and then when we're finished, we can disinfect them and reuse them. Masks wise, if you put a mask on, there isn't really a time limit for when it's right. It's been on 15 minutes, take it off, throw it away. It doesn't work like that. Just wear it as long as you can, and they're mostly disposables. If you want to use one of these, then just wash it and re-wear it once it's washed. Okay. So we've talked about protection for you. We've talked about when you're going to provide cover and how, and we've talked about protocols on site. You will get people with very different perceptions of risk. You'll get people with a very different idea of what 2 meters is. You will get people that keep invading your space. You'll get others that step further back. A lot of this comes from sales and marketing. Andy's a farmer, so salesmen are taught when they're trying to complete a sale with a farmer, you don't walk up to them and shake them by the hand. You stand over here somewhere and go, "Here, right, mate, how you doing?" Because that's the sort of space that people living in rural areas are used to. The salesman's told that if you're working in an inner city doing sales, you have to get up very close and you do a close-in handshake with a clasp on the shoulder as well. And if you're in market towns, you shake at that sort of distance, because people are all used to different levels of personal separation. Some of the people here today don't get 2 meters. Some really do get it and want to add up to it. You're going to have to be aware of that and deal with people who are feeling quite bottled up and fractious, and may well be down here because they're desperate to escape from the house and they're climbing the walls, and they're bloody well going to go sailing whatever you tell them. And we're going to have to try and juggle that a little bit, and just remember people feeling pretty stressed out. I don't know if you've noticed it on the roads, that there haven't been as many people on the roads, but some of them have been driving really, really badly.
We hardly go out.
There you go. Yeah.
That's the other thing. We've got a daughter at home who wears shielding.
Yes.
So I've been the only one that's going out, and
Yeah.
I've been being really careful and
Yeah.
sticking to the 2 meters, and I go shopping
Yeah.
at the times when I don't think there are going to be people
Yeah.
there. But
It's
I
difficult,
think
isn't it?
for
Because you've got
this,
that
we're
risk
still
for
gonna
other people that you're trying to shield. And if somebody else isn't respecting your space, there's that risk of passing it on to someone else, isn't there?
Yeah.
The more aware we can be of it, the quicker we can nail the bloody thing. If we all get lackadaisical and relax too much, then the dreaded R number's going to go back up and we're back to square one. So, any questions? Yep.
One, with some John's ambulance training at the duty work, they've been saying don't do the breaths at all. They've been just putting a tea
Yeah.
towel over the face. Is that,
So, Red Cross has said something similar, and all the first aid organisations collaborate on providing resus guidance. There's a British Resuscitation Council that acts like an umbrella organisation to make sure that all the different first aid groups say pretty much the same thing. So follow that advice. It's logical, it makes sense.
Isn't saying, the other thing they were saying is if casualty could have been first aid, just instruct them and give them the thing.
Yes, yeah. So if they can self-help under your guidance, so much the better. Yeah, that makes perfect sense as well. So that's good logical advice. Any others? Any questions? Andy, is there anything we haven't covered from the previous sections that you want to cover now?
Don't think so.
No? Okay. In terms of workload for volunteer safety cover, there is no organised club racing, probably for at least another 2 weeks, dependent on government guidance. The closest we're getting to organised competitive sailing at the moment, choosing his words carefully, will be time trials, where you can set off from the beach and go to the tower and back and see how you do at that compared with other people doing the same thing. So we're not looking at groups of boats out there. There won't be start lines crowded with boats waiting to get across the start line. There might be time trials where one boat after another goes out in effecting relays.
And so presumably all racing will be using the club boys that are already out there. There won't be any mark laying.
We are trying to minimise mark laying. The preference, I think, of the safety boat drivers is not to lay any marks, especially if you're single crewed, because it's so much trickier trying to single crew and mark lay. So mark laying will be kept to an absolute minimum, preferably none, potentially maybe one to make a start line, but that'll be it.
Yeah, the less mark laying you do, the more abnormal the situation is, people remembering different.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to help with crewing ribs, we've got Duty Man, but it's also at the moment, over the next few weeks, it'd be really sensible to ring in advance. Use the option when you ring in, you've got office or coxswain. If you select the coxswain option, speak to the duty coxswain and take their guidance. There will be days when there's absolutely no need for more safety drivers, and there'll be other days when we desperately do need them. So probably best to ring in advance, Andy, and seek advice. Yeah.
I mean, if we give you a number and you desperately need somebody, you can let us know too, can't you?
That's not a bad idea. So we could have a...
You'll have our numbers, won't you? So
Yeah. And Andy's only contacted a relatively small group of the most experienced boat drivers.